Here's the biggest thing that's on my mind right now. Right, when people say "thou doth protest too much," what is he trying to hide? Why is the former president of the United States so determined to keep January 6th, that committee, from finding out what he and his allies were doing before and during the insurrection at Capitol Hill? Why, oh why, oh why? Our breaking news: the White House slapping down his claims of executive privilege, saying, and I quote here, "Former President Trump abused the office of the presidency and attempted to subvert a peaceful transfer of power. The former president's actions represented a unique and existential threat to our democracy that can't be swept under the rug." As President Biden determined, the constitutional protections of the executive privilege should not be used to shield information that reflects a clear and apparent effort to subvert the Constitution. That is from the White House spokesperson, Mike Gwynn. So, President Biden himself nixed the executive privilege claims. That, as the former president filed a lawsuit, of course, in D.C. District Court today against the January 6th committee and the National Archives as part of his campaign to keep records from his presidency secret. And he may be running out of time because the National Archives telling him that they'll turn over the records to Congress in less than 1 month unless the court intervenes. Trump's lawyers calling the committee's request, quote, an illegal fishing expedition. This is no fishing expedition. This is about bringing to light exactly what happened on one of the darkest days in our history, the day bloodthirsty rioters stormed the Capitol, Trump supporters, right? Hunting lawmakers, beating police, and trying to overturn our free and fair election. That's what that was. The committee sending a letter to Steve Bannon, rejecting his argument for failing to comply with the panel subpoena and dismissing his claim of executive privilege. And one of only 2 Republicans on the committee says that the former president could face a subpoena.
If we subpoena all of a sudden the former president, we know that's going to become kind of a circus. So that's not necessarily something we want to do up front. But if he has pieces of information we need, we certainly will.
Boy, we've got a lot more to come on this. Believe that. We got a lot more to come. But as we were just talking about, the news that shocked so many people today, the death of General Colin Powell, a man who devoted himself to his country through a lifetime of firsts. The nation's first black Secretary of State, the first black chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the first black national security advisor. Listen to what he told me. This was back in 2009. He's talking to me about Barack Obama. This is after Barack Obama, the candidate he endorsed after serving in the Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and the George W. Bush administrations, became the first black president of the United States. Here it is.
We now have a man who is president who is African American, but let us not rest on that pedestal. Let's recognize we have a long way to go.
Do you feel like that you, in some way, contributed to where we are now, that moment, this new president?
Yeah, I think I did, but I'm not bragging about it because hundreds of thousands contributed. I contributed in a visible way by becoming the first secretary and first national security advisor and chairman who is black, but I was given that opportunity. I'm more impressed by those who came before me, who could have done the same thing I did, but they didn't have the opportunity because of racism and segregation and Jim Crowism, but they still fought.
Mm-hmm. And listen, we have something new tonight that about what Colin Powell said. This may have been his last interview, speaking openly with Bob Woodward about his health struggles in an interview for the book, Peril.
Well, you see, I've got to go to the hospital about 2 or 3 times a week. I've got multiple myeloma cancer, and I've got Parkinson's disease, but otherwise I'm fine.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry.
Don't say no, and don't feel sorry for me. For God's sake, I'm 85 years old. Got to have something.
Well,
And I haven't lost a day of life fighting these 2 diseases. I'm in good shape.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, you've never lost a day of life. I mean, think of the activist general, former Secretary of State, now Oracle, right?
Yes.
Wow, what an attitude, right? I'm 85 years old. I have to have something. Amazing, amazing attitude. You know, that was just 3 months ago. The military man in the fight of his life while downplaying what he was going through. Tonight, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, paying tribute.
He's not only a dear friend and a patriot, one of our great military leaders and a man of overwhelming decency. This is a guy born son of immigrants in New York City, raised in Harlem in the South Bronx, graduated from City College in New York. And he rose to the highest ranks, not only in the military, but also in areas of foreign policy and statecraft.
CUNY graduate. I am too. I actually talked about that with him whenever I got to see him and speak to him in person. So, news of Colin Powell's death breaking about 8 this morning, and within minutes over at the Fox Propaganda Network, they were saying this.
There will be many conversations in the wake of this death. There will be honoring this man, this public servant, this human being who was a professional soldier for 35 years. We can reflect on his life, and we should. There will also be conversations about the fact that he was fully vaccinated, according to his family, and he died from complications from COVID.
Minutes, literally minutes after we learned of the death of a man who devoted his life to serving this country, minutes later, already disgracefully using his death to raise questions about vaccines. That wasn't the end of it. It goes on.
We're seeing data from Europe, from the United Kingdom, that fully vaccinated people are being hospitalized and fully vaccinated people are dying from COVID. And here we have a very high-profile example that is going to require more truth from our government, from our health leaders as well, as we talk about this story on a day when state after state and institution after institution are pushing mandates for vaccination.
Seriously? I guess, yeah, some people never learn, don't know any better. I don't know. Don't have the chops. I don't know what it is. Like, just with a natural instinct not to do something like that. It seems like, you know, any decent human being would know. You just don't. You know. At least that's how my mama raised me. The man had just died. And this guy can't wait to make it into a fight about vaccine mandates. It is disgraceful. And then, in a twice-deleted tweet, Fox's John Roberts said, and I'm quoting here, "The fact that Colin Powell died from a breakthrough COVID infection raises new concerns about how effective vaccines are long-term." So he went on to say that he deleted his tweet because people interpreted it as anti-vax. Okay, so that was his defense. Look, that's the original tweet again. Do you want facts? So I will give you some facts. Colin Powell's death doesn't raise new concerns about the effectiveness of vaccines. The fact is, Colin Powell, a soldier to the end, was battling multiple myeloma, which is a cancer of the cells that make antibodies. He also had Parkinson's, which put him at high risk with an immunocompromised system, making him much more susceptible to the virus. Doctors say what Colin Powell's death shows is this: vaccinating everyone is important to protect cancer patients. You get vaccinated for yourself, but you also get vaccinated to protect the vulnerable, people like General Powell. That would be a fitting tribute to his legacy of service. Colin Powell was a man of character and a man of integrity. Even when it came to the moment that he called, this was him, a permanent blot on his record. His 2003 speech to the UN, in which he presented evidence that the U.S. intelligence community said proved Iraq had misled inspectors and hid weapons of mass destruction. 2 years later, a government report said that the intelligence committee was dead wrong.
I regret it now because the information was wrong. Of course I do. But I will always be seen as the one who made the case before the international community. I swayed public opinion. There's no question about it.
Again, this is him owning up to what he later called one of his most momentous failures, the one with the widest ranging impact. So That's what decent people do. That's what caring people do, empathetic people, leaders. They do. If they make a mistake, they admit it. We do it all the time here at CNN. I've done it. I'll say I made a mistake. That was a man of duty, a man who put his country first.